again. I dare say that most viewers have seen today that Britain's police forces have, once again, confessed their sins and said publicly that they are institutionally racist and are determined to change. Apart from the usual guff about striving to ensure that their staff reflect the community which they serve, a mantra which we hear echoed across the nation these days, there is also seemingly a determination to stopping and searching black people so often and using force against them. It appears that black people are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people, and 5 times more likely to have force used against them during an arrest. Gosh, I wonder why that might be. Is it racism or something else? In the description to this video I give a link to a piece from Sky News which describes what is going on. I give a link too to a news story about the latest supposed example of this racial prejudice by the police, headed "Teenage Girl Traumatised After Police Strip Search." This story has now been picked up by all the newspapers and is being brandished around as an example of the dreadful racism which has caused all those chief constables to issue their abject mea culpa and promises to change. Before looking at this particular case, it might be worth mentioning a few general things about the police, not only in Britain, but across the world. When I was young, my grandmother gave me some very sound advice. She told me, never be funny with a policeman. By this, she did not mean that I shouldn't relate amusing anecdotes to a police officer or tell them any jokes, but more that I should not, to use a vulgar colloquialism, piss them about. I've followed this principle across the years and it stood me in good stead. If a policeman tells me to come to him, that's what I do. If he says, show me your hands, I do so. If he says, get in my car, that's just what I do. Stop talking, I stop at once. As a result of this, the run-ins I've had with the police in various countries have ended without my being shot or beaten to death. And I have had, shall we say, awkward encounters with the police from different places ranging from Soviet Russia to Turkey, Syria and Israel. So I've had quite a bit of experience of what you might call strong police forces and come through unscathed, I'm glad to say. One of the things one notices about the interactions between many black people and the police is that they don't seem to have been offered the same helpful advice which I received when I was a child, because they never seem to do what the police tell them, and this not infrequently ends badly. Who can forget the sight of George Floyd being told to stand still or get into the police car? Would he do those things? He would not. His insistence on playing silly beggars with the police did not, as I recall, end well. What about an example of this kind of thing in this country? I live not far from Debden Tube Station, which is towards the end of London Underground's Central Line. Nearby is a further education college at which incidentally I used to work. There are many black students at that college who come in by tube from some of the rougher parts of the capital, Hackney, Waltham Forest, Newham, Redbridge and so on. Now, all 17 and 18-year-olds try to fiddle or evade fares on buses and so on. They always have, they always will. They were doing it 50 years ago and they are doing it now. When caught out at this, the accepted response is to be penitent and humble, say sorry, offer to pay, and if necessary, give a false name and address. When the London Transport Police stage a crackdown at Debden Station, as they do from time to time, to put a stop to fare evasion by the students, this is what the white students do. and they're generally given a stern warning and allowed to go on their way. None of them get pushed, shoved, searched, arrested or anything else. How different, how very different, is the approach of the black kids who are stopped when they're not carrying a valid ticket. They refuse to stop when the police officer tells them to, and they carry on walking away, which means that the police have to follow them and lay hands on them just in order to talk to them. Ouch, that would be the use of the force which is used disproportionately against black people, I guess. They swear, they raise their voices until their friends gather round menacingly, and the police have to warn them to back off and sometimes push them back. More use of force against black people right there, I think. They stand right up close to a police officer and shout in the guy's face until flecks of spittle land on the officer's cheeks. Yes, I really have seen this happening. The officer asks the youth to move back, and when the kid doesn't do so, I've seen police officers shove them back. More force, you see. In short, the whole encounter turns into a crisis in a way which stopping a white kid never ever seems to. What about stop and search? Well, the police wish to prevent knife crime and murders, and I wonder if anybody can guess which ethnicity is most likely both to be stabbed to death and also to be doing the stabbing. That would be IC3, which is the police code for a certain ethnicity. They are far more likely to carry knives and so are far more likely to be stopped and searched. Here's a good recent example which was in the newspaper this morning and to which I give a link. A 15-year-old black girl was with a group of friends who encountered two boys. Something happened, and it's debated what did happen, but something happened to cause the two boys to dial 999 and allege that they had been the victims of an attempted robbery at knife point. When the police arrived, they searched the people who were accused of trying to rob the boys and found that the girl was carrying a knife blade. Unsurprisingly, she was arrested. Now, they may well not have realised that she was technically a child. 15-year-olds, when dressed in adult clothes, particularly girls, can be very tall and have the appearance of grown women. At any rate, she was taken to the police station and held in a cell. It then came to light that she had somehow managed to secrete a sharpened piece of wood about her person, whereupon the police got quite ticked off and searched her, requiring her to move all her clothes to make sure there were no more knives or sharp implements about her person. Imagine if they hadn't and the girl had injured or even killed herself. It seems that this young person was in the habit of self-harming, at least according to her mother, and so carried a knife and pointy stick about with her out of doors for that purpose, which sounds to me just a little less than a convincing explanation for the whole business, but there. The police use force more against black people in Britain because black people are more likely to cut up rough during questioning or an arrest. They stop and search black people more often because they are more likely to be carrying a knife. If black people stopped carrying knives about and simply did as they were told when stopped by the police, everything would be a lot simpler and there would be fewer stop and searches and less force used during arrests. Everybody, including the police, know all this, but nobody likes to say so out loud.